Hello, beautiful Virgos. These are going to be your messages for the month of November 2018. And let me just tune in to your energies. I was doing another sign a moment ago, and the energy feels completely different. What I will say right from the get-go is that there are two symbols that are being shown to me. One is a pendulum swinging from one end to another. To me, it's about balance. And another symbol that I'm being shown is the number 8, which is always to me about strength. So, in terms of what it means to you, is that I feel that many of you are getting very, very close to feeling balanced and therefore much stronger inside of you. This seems to be a result of your hard work within yourself and and you choosing to create your own rules in order to feel loved, to feel qualified, to feel important. Another way of saying is, I feel you are choosing to look at yourself differently and creating different sets of rules and regulations in terms of how you think about you in order for it to sustain you long term with regards to happiness. Happiness is abundance, happiness is joy, happiness is many things, security, safety. Happiness encompasses many things for me. Let me just see if there's anything else. For some of you, this is about choosing to take a different route. Symbolically speaking, it is about coming to a point where going or continuing to go the same route, the same path, the same road is no longer satisfying to you. Whether it is a set of conditions outside of you or a set of conditions inside of you, there is, for some of you, the proverbial choice that is needing to be made or that will be made by you quite willingly. Usually when we make this choice, or at least in the way it's presented, we have to have an inner shake-up first. There has to be some inner discomfort before we are brought to a place of conclusion inside of ourselves in order to calmly arrive at a decision point. So it feels like many of you are challenged or will be challenged with a choice or decision that you will make. I also want to say to you, if this makes sense, always regard yourself in the highest of ways. In other words, the way you see yourself and the way you view yourself internally is how the world will view you. In other words, what you expect to see is what you will find. Therefore, if you have some things inside of you that are not very healthy, you might have to look at those in order for your expectations to change. I'm being asked to give you a scenario. Let's say you are in a relationship. And let's say you are one of those individuals who continually gives. You're the glue, you're the giver, but it feels like you're not the receiver so much. And you get to a point where you feel burdened by it, and you start to feel angry and even resentful about the fact that you are constantly the one giving, but you're not receiving. And the question to ask yourself is this: why is it that I prevent myself from receiving? Now, some of you will say, well, no, it's just the way it is. Like, nobody's offering things to me. And I will go back and say, your expectation of the world is what you will find. In other words, if there is something inside of you that feels undeserving, that feels not lovable, that feels less than, whatever you were taught, whatever you learned, you will have that expectation of the world outside of you, and therefore you will always find it. So if you are in one of those situations where you are constantly giving and not receiving, you have the responsibility in terms of yourself to ask yourself the reasons why. This is not a blame game. It never is. This is more about a deeper level, deeper context of you in terms of understanding yourself on a conscious level. So how does this play into what I was saying? Quite simply that for those of you who this applies to, you may need to decide whether this is the way you choose to continue or you choose to do something different, which means you have to make a decision, most likely and most importantly, about you first. And I also want to say what you feel matters. And I feel the reason why I'm supposed to say this is that for some of you, you feel like you don't. Perhaps you feel like you don't because this is the feedback you get from the world. But again, it's important for me to say and to highlight that you will receive exactly what you expect, though the expectation may not always, and usually isn't, a conscious one. So, let's move on. The first card represents the theme, and the card of achievement comes up. The achievement is a fairly self-explanatory word. It says you're going to be achieving things. There's a rewards and all those things. Yes, they're all great. But I see something in addition to that I feel is more important for me to say. And the message is this. The world wasn't built in one day, nor was the Rome built by one person. In other words, it is an effort of many that creates a sense of achievement. Some of you may be saying, what the hell is she talking about? I know, I can hear it. And what I'm talking about is that some of you have been believing that it's you against the world, that it is on your shoulders to make everything right, that it is your responsibility to be the caretaker, to be the provider, to be the giver, while at the same time singling yourself out of the receiving component. So this message is about creating a space inside of yourself where you allow others to contribute to your happiness. Now, if we are dealing with a faulty belief system, as in one that says we're not good enough on some reason, I mean, there's gazillion versions of that belief, we may, subconsciously speaking, not be open to receiving, believing we can't for whatever reason. So although this message is about achievement, it is more about recognizing that part of your achievement lies in the fact that you need to be open to receiving. A simple example would be remembering how you react when others give you a compliment. Do you cringe? Do you shrink? Do you shriek? Do you find ways not to kind of throw that away? I've said this before, but it's worth mentioning again. If you have challenge receiving a compliment, you have a fundamental challenge with receiving. And since life is very much like a battery, that's what I'm supposed to say, energetically speaking, in order for everything to run smoothly, there must be giving and receiving. That's just the way it is. It is law of reciprocity? No, reciprocity? I think you guys know what I mean. In other words, if you have challenges with deserving, you will have challenges with receiving. And although I feel there are many beautiful things coming to many of you, some of you may have a beautiful thing staring at you, yet you will resist it and you will have a tendency to push it away. Example. Let's say you have been looking for Mr. or Mrs. Right, and you've struggled for a very long time. You've been with people who were just not very nice, not very kind, took you for granted, maybe even they were abusive in some way, shape, or form. And you've been working really hard on yourself, and then somebody shows up, and they're seemingly everything you ever wanted. Before you know it, you start to look at the things and look for ways of how this is no longer somehow right for you. And even though it's everything you've ever wanted for yourself, somehow it doesn't fit the bill. So what I'm talking about is a level of self-sabotage. If you are having challenges with the concept of self in terms of deserving, you will often find yourself in situations where you sabotage the very thing you are looking for. Without even knowing, you'll just do it. So, with that said, what are some of the other messages? Peaks of Joy is a message that quite simply to me says, expect nothing but the best. Now, funny, we were talking about expectations earlier, right? What is an expectation? Expectation is a belief that something is going to be, something is going to come to you a certain way, that some things are in any specific way. Our beliefs are rigid ways of looking at things, and some of these things help us, some of these things, well, don't. So for you, it is to remember that your thought creates your reality. Therefore, if you focus on things not going right for you or never going right for you, if that is where your focus goes, that is what you will keep repeating. And as in the example of self-sabotage, let's say Mr. and Mrs. Right is standing right in front of you and they're everything you thought you wanted. Yet your belief system is always attached to this is too good to be true, this is too good to be true, this is too good to be true, I know because I lived it. You will create a scenario, you will push that away. So first and foremost, change your awareness about you. Are you happy with who you are? If not, ask yourselves, why not? Are you in a constant state of needing to fix yourself? If that's the case, ask yourself the reason why. Some of you will say, well, there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with anybody. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about trying to fill a void that is somehow we think is missing. So to make this dialogue a little bit shorter, notice your environment inside of yourself. Are you a person who generally looks at life in positive ways? Or are you a person who generally looks at life in terms of things happening to you or in negative ways? If that is the case, you will have a tendency to be a pleaser or to overgive because you will believe that things don't happen for you. Things happen to you. They don't happen for you. The next message is the listener. And for some of you, the message is, are you refusing to hear the truth? Are you refusing to see the truth? So there's a level of stubbornness some of you may be dealing with where people have been saying things to you, perhaps like I am now, and you're just discounting it, you're just treating it as non-existent. That's going to be a message for some of you. For others of you, it is about feeling not important, like you're not feeling heard. Remember, if your idea about the world is that you're not important, or if your idea about you is that you're not important, and your expectation is that is what you'll get, life is constantly going to throw you crap, then you will end up in situations where you will feel not heard because that is your expectation. If you do not feel important enough, no one will listen to you. That is your belief. So, if you are in a situation where you are not being heard and it is continuing over and over, number one, ask yourself, is this what I want? Do I want to continue not being heard? Chances are the answer is no. If the answer is no, then the next question is, okay, if I choose to no longer continue with that, what can I do to change it? You can't make people listen to you, but you can choose to be with people. You can choose to not participate with people who don't listen to you. And I know it's not always black and white. I know that. But if you come from a place of deserving, and if you have enough value in yourself, if you feel confident, people will naturally listen to you because that will be your expectation. So your expectations are needing to be addressed here. Achievement or lack of it is a result of your inner expectation about you and the world. If you are someone who believes you're not good enough and that's a very basic way that I can present this. I mean, many of us feel that way. It's just something that we do. But if we are confined in that state, if we are always in it, the world is going to keep going in the same direction over and over. There will be no change. In other words, shift your thinking about you and you will be amazed what happens for you, not to you. Learning to nurture is another message that comes up, and I find it fascinating because learning to nurture is all about letting go of the idea of sacrificing yourself in order to be nurtured, but it's also about allowing yourself to be nurtured. Now, again, if you are one of those people who believes that the world is on your shoulders and that's it, you're the one responsible, chances are you grew up that way. But also, when you continue feeling that way and you continue doing things based on those feelings, you are actually avoiding the real reason, the problem, the challenge, the problem. I'm going to call it the problem. And the problem in this case is perhaps you have difficulty with receiving. So I would invite you, for those of you who this makes sense to ask yourself, do I have difficulty with receiving? Learning to nurture is not about learning to nurture others. It is a lot easier for us to nurture others than it is to nurture ourselves or to accept nurture from others. A lot of it is about unconditional love. Do you believe love is conditional? Do you come from the perspectives of a whole bunch of conditions around you in terms of acceptance, safety, and security? And as a result, this is what you've learned. Do you hold conditions in your relationships in order to keep yourself safe? Is your love conditional even though you're expecting someone to love you unconditionally? Those are all the trappings we get into without knowing the reason why. The guidance card is the Emperor in reverse. What this is telling me, obviously the guidance is not for you not to be in charge. The guidance here is look at yourself and notice what are the beliefs about you that make you fundamentally think and believe that you are not in charge, whether it is of your life, whether it is of your relationship. You can only be in charge of yourself. So with the idea of addictions, if you are someone who is heavily addicted to anything, any sort of thing, that is you not being in charge. That is you grasping for things to help you feel in charge, but that's not you feeling in charge. So this is about your emotional responsibility to yourself. It's about examining your thoughts, examining your feelings. For many of you, feeling is very difficult. For many of you, believe it or not, you're healers. And you love to nurture others. You're drawn to nurture others, which is a beautiful thing. But when that drive, when that desire stems from the fact that nurturing others is the only way you get value or you feel valuable, then that's not a balanced view of your internal environment. It simply is not, because it stems from fear. I also want to say, learn to look at yourself not in terms of black and white, but in terms of everything in between. In other words, don't view the world in polarized ways, because when you do, you're only creating distance. You're creating distance between you and others. That's what polarized view means. For example, I'm being asked to give an example of a polarized view. Obviously, one of the classic ones is if you have a spiritual gift, according to your upbringing, you should not charge money. I've talked about this before. That's a very basic example. That is a very polarized view. I always say, God didn't say, I don't want you to have money. God said, here's your free will, do whatever you want. Be happy, figure out the best way how. Be kind to others, be loving to yourself, be all-inclusive, don't create chaos, have everything. So that is one way of giving an example of thinking in terms of being polarized. The idea of you versus me or them versus us, that is also very polarizing. It does not create inclusion, it creates exclusion. When that happens, peace can never reside, because peace is all about creating inner awareness and inner harmony. When we have beliefs that make us see things in a very polarized way, we create distance and disharmony. And that is not what we want in terms of creating happiness, not only in our lives, but also in the world. Devotion to service is a message that tells me that many of you are here in order to serve others. But I also want to caution you, which is something I had to go through as well. There's nothing greater than serving others. And to be honest with you, every single one of us serves others in some way, shape, or form. But if you believe that you are here to serve others, notice if you are not using that as a way of not being responsible for your own happiness. If you are constantly wanting to help others heal, to take care of them, to have your nose in their business, if you will, but at the same time, your garden is not being attended to, then what you are effectively doing is you're avoiding what your responsibility is. Because your responsibility is to you first and foremost, second to others. For those of you who are healers, the greatest gift you can give to another is when you come from a peaceful and balanced state inside of you. For one, you won't get triggered as much when other people's stuff comes up. And two, you won't have this need to be needed. And although it feels beautiful to feel needed, we all want that. It gives us perspective. It gives us value. It gives us a sense of being at home, of belonging. That's not the question here. The question is if that equation is skewed so far one way that unless you do it, your life has no meaning. So it's about changing perspectives. The Bone Collector is a message of gathering all the lessons from the past and drawing wisdom from it. Experiences that we go through are our greatest teachers, particularly the harsher ones. If you have insecurities, if you have lack, if you have feelings of negativity, look at all those experiences that created those feelings inside of you. Draw conclusions in a way that will empower you. Ask yourself how you have grown and how these experiences have made you amazing, for amazing you are. And as a result, you'll be able to have more peace with what has happened, and you'll be able to move on, emotionally speaking, which will lead to much greater sense of balance. And I think that's all I have for you. I hope this was helpful. Of course, I have no connection to this other than the meaning of the messages. If this makes no sense to you at the beginning of the month, listen to it later. I always say my greatest wish for you is to get something out of it, and you can apply in any aspect of your life. My messages are meant to be that way. I'm here to help you learn how to be empowered. So notice how this comes into play. If it doesn't make sense now, look at it towards the end of November, or even towards the end of the year, because I feel these messages are timeless. I want them to be timeless for you. My joy is to see you say, wow, this makes sense. You made me think. And as a result, I made some changes. And as a result, I'm happier. That is my greatest wish. And with that said, I wish you best of luck. Take care of yourself. Take care of your emotional needs first. It's very important. It's critical, actually. I'm not asking you to ditch your responsibilities. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's about making sure that you are taking care of you first. Very important. And with that said, best of luck. I look forward to seeing you soon. And of course, for private sessions with me, that information is down below. And that's it. Take care.